Well, now we shall understand some other terms which begin with the letter G. After understanding F, we are understanding it alphabetically. There are four terms beginning with G in our list. Of course, this is not the list, exhaustive list as such. I'm saying I have included the terms which I felt like you can go ahead with other terms as well. The first term that we are going to understand, which begins with G, is gendered. We are familiar with the word gender. Gender refers to the difference between male and female. Okay, so this the term gendered is used to refer to the literary work or other works. You can say painting or anything, whatever, reflecting the experiences, prejudices, or orientations of one sex more than the other. Gendered language also means the focus. For example, we say the movie is more about men, not about women. It talks about the experience of men. It talks about the prejudices. Means woman is underestimated, or more. It talks more about women and their problems, or orientations of one sex. Means there is more information about one sex. So that, and even the language can also be gendered one. More focus is on the male dominated language. So gendered is the term that can be anything. Means it refers to anything reflecting or involving gender differences, which underscores, which differentiates between man and woman, or it talks about stereotypical gender roles. If you read Kamala Das's poem Introduction, it talks about the stereotypical role of woman: be Ammi, be Madhavi Kotti, or be Kamala. Means a woman is told to become a woman itself. So this is what being gendered is. Means when a society tells, a family tells a girl to behave like a girl, that is being gendered. Means stereotypical roles. Means a girl is seen to be playing the role of daughter, a daughter-in-law, a mother, whatsoever. Okay, these are called stereotypical gender roles. Typical Saas Bahu serials that you watch on television channels are mostly gendered. They differentiate between man and women. So when a work is approached as thematically or stylistically specific to male or female characteristics or concern, that work is said to be gendered. Okay, this is how we can understand the term gendered. We many times we say that movie is gendered, that song is gendered, that a particular artistic outlet performance is very gendered. Then time you mean to say that its theme is more about man or woman, or stylistically the language or the way it is presented is gendered one. Okay, now we shall go ahead with is there anyone who wants to talk something? Okay, with this again we would like to continue with our next term, the discussion on the next term, that is genre. As I had introduced this term a short while before, we're talking about frame story. So genre is the French word. The pronunciation is genre. It's derived from the French phrase genre, which means kind, not the kind, that adjective. Kind means type or type. Don't take it as kind person, etc. Genre refers to what we call a type, a kind of, no, a kind of animal, we say. So in that way, a kind of book. So a genre is a category of literature which is identified, which is classified by its form, by its content and style. Taking into its form, its content and style, we call it a poem, we call it a novel, a fiction, we call it a play. So we take into consideration the form, first of all, the way the story is presented, then the content, the message it tries to give, and the style, the way it is presented. Okay, so genre allows literary critics and students like us, those who study literature, to classify compositions within the larger canon of literature. Means we say literature, but when you say literature, literature does not refer to any specific, literary work. It refers to different forms. So genre is a kind of classificatory system, we can say. We use the term to refer to this classification. So it refers to the concept of studying literature, the classification and definition of types or kinds. So we say it is a tragedy, it is a comedy, a particular piece of work is an epic, it is a lyric, or it is a pastoral poem. So what makes you to say like this? What makes the critics to state, to uh, call a particular piece of work as a tragedy, a particular piece of an epic work as an epic? So it is the form, the content, and the style in which that particular text is written. So based on that, we call it a tragedy, a comedy, etc. The term genre was first introduced by Aristotle in his famous work, Discourse, we can call it, Poetics. Okay, so first it was introduced by Aristotle. Since then, the genre principle has been an essential concomitant, means coming with that particular, means when as soon as you say it's literature, that comes in your mind. In addition to that, to the basic proposition that literature can be studied scientifically. As soon as you say that literature can be studied scientifically, the second idea comes in your mind is that it has different classificatory system. We can classify literature into different types. So that is what genre is. And we can talk about historical fiction as a genre of literature, satire, or zombie romantic comedies, whatever, which are called as rom com. And we can talk about fiction, plays. You can talk about poetry. You can talk about epics. So this early classification, more genres such as split between comedy and tragedy. As we go ahead, now we have different genres now. Earlier, only we talked about fiction, plays, and poetry. Then we kept on talking about tragedy. Within drama, we have tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy. Within poetry, you got lyric, sonnet, etc., epic, okay, pastoral poetry. So all these are types. The general term in English is types, and the French term is technical term is genre. Okay. Now we should go ahead with the next term, that is Gothic genre or the Gothic novel. The Gothic novel is a genre, associated with the mystery and intrigue surrounding the supernatural and the unknown. Means these are the novels with medieval atmosphere. There is a mystery in it. If you watch movies like, I don't remember the title, that very famous mysterious movies. Uh, I forgot the title. It is like it begins with Chandra. Does anyone remember a horror movie liked by many people? Okay, so it yes, someone knows it. I think. Who is it? Can you please tell me? If you remember, you can tell. Okay, never mind. We shall go ahead. So it has a mystery and a kind of intrigue. Intrigue means plan to plan to damage someone, destroy someone. Just like Iago. Iago has an intrigue to destroy Othello. So now, what are the characteristics of Gothic genre? It includes death and decay, haunted homes, haunted castles, then family curses, madness, powerful love, romance, ghosts, and vampires. So all these qualities, all these characteristics are found in Gothic genre. Means you come across a castle. So it is a form of fiction. In many of Hindi, South Indian movies which are dubbed into Hindi, you come across these kind of characteristics. Even the Marathi movie, I don't remember the title, where you have come across the haunted Wada castle, and then the forefathers, live there. They are already dead, but still they live there in that particular castle. Then some even Marathi serial was there. Unfortunately, I don't remember the titles now. Marathi serial which had the background of Konkan in it, and there was a ghost. Okay, so Gothic genre include all these supernatural elements, supernatural characteristics, haunted homes, पछाडलेले जे हे असतात वाडे, पछाडलेले गड किल्ले, okay, rajwade, etc. So examples of Gothic genre include the Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, maybe you're studying it this year, then Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and then Dracula by Bram Stoker. These are some of the very famous examples of the Gothic genre of novel. Finally, I would like to talk about one more term beginning with G before we conclude our lecture. That is grotesque. It is an adjective which means something which is fanciful, something which is bizarre, something which is absurdly incongruous. Incongruous means something which does not go as per the logic. Congruous means susangat, and incongruous is visangat, something absurdly incongruous. Bizarre means of something which cannot be easily believed in, and it departs, something which departs markedly from the natural, the expected, or the typical. Whatever typical ideas we have about it, about love, about romance, about marriage, whatever typical, I mean, it departs from that idea itself, from our expectations. It is something which is not as per your expectations. So grotesque is characterized by a breakup of the everyday world by mysterious forces. Means in movies, in films, you come across this kind of technique being used. Okay, something bizarre, something fanciful. In many of the Hindi movies, Hindi TV serials, I come across this kind of grotesque, something which is not believed so easily. So this form differs from fantasy. Fantasy is again something which is unimaginable. beyond our imagination. Imagination is a bit realistic. Fantasy is beyond that. When you say it is imaginary, imaginary can be possible. Whatever you imagine today may become tomorrow's reality. But fantasy is beyond that. Okay, so grotesque is a bit different from fantasy. You might be knowing ST Coleridge, brings out the difference between fancy and imagination. So fantasy goes in line with fancy. Fancy is something which is unrealistic, which may not happen in real life. For example, if you dream of flying in the sky, is a kind of fancy, and a movie made of that is a kind of fantasy. For example, if you remember Akshay Kumar's movie, I think Akshay Kumar or somebody else, it is not Akshay Kumar. Action replay means he goes into past by using time machine. Okay, that itself is a kind of fantasy. Okay, many of the movies, Rajnikant's Robot, for example, in which a robot falls in love with a lady, is a kind of fantasy. Fine. So grotesque differs from fantasy because here the reader is not sure whether to react with horror, humor, or horror, whether to laugh or whether to be scared of. These days, people talk about the grotesque. Now, the term is used in a day-to-day language. Their meaning is closer to its adjectival form. Very strange or ugly means when we use the term grotesque, it means very strange or ugly. Means in a way that is not normal or something which is unnatural, we can say. How grotesque, when you say that it means something which is very strange. So the grotesque in literature focuses on the human body and all the ways that it can be distorted or exaggerated. Human body which can be exaggerated or distorted. In, for example, in many of the Hindi movies, you come across a villain with a very strange, body or physical appearance. In horror movies, especially, so that is what grotesque is. In children literature as well, you come across a kind of Satan, a kind of demon with four hands or with two heads or with a kind of different appearance. So that can be called grotesque. Now, why is it used in literature? The aim is to uh, elicit or our empathy. Elicit means to bring out or to make us feel disgusted. You feel, no, oh my God, how ugly it is when you see that. So that is something grotesque. In many of the Hollywood movies, you come across it. So it draws its power from the combination of the familiar and the unfamiliar, or the familiar distorted. A certain characters, for example, Spider-Man or any other such characters, imaginary characters, can be the examples of Grotesque. You know, then it refers to works that blur the line between the real and the fantastic. Gothic fiction, for example, we talked about just now, often has these elements of grotesque. In in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you come across a monster, a monster which is very big, created by the scientist. Just like, Frankenstein robot, Rajnikant's robot is based on this particular idea itself. Mary Shelley had used a monster, and here he uses that particular person, robot. So Gothic fiction often has these elements. And the famous examples of these stories include E.T.A. Hoffmann and Franz Kafka. They use, for example, Kafka's The Metamorphosis. Here, the human protagonist is transformed into an insect. Even Girish Karnad's Haivardhan, the character of Haivardhan itself is an example of grotesque. A person having horse head and human body is an example of grotesque. So, with these words, I would like to end my today's discussion. Give me a minute, got hung as usual. You may do. You may leave the class. We're facing some technical problem.